All right, back again with Tanya. Now we're going to be talking about some pests and disease problems, starting out with aphids.
Okay, aphids. There's all different kinds, hundreds of different kinds. They're all kind of treated in the same way. We usually see about 4 different types of aphids here in the HOS Arboretum. And so these are currants, fruiting currants. This is a red one. And every spring I have aphids on my currants. I typically don't treat for those. I usually just wait for the ladybugs to show up, and the ladybugs are a little bit later than the aphids. If it was really problematic and was causing a loss of my crop, then I would definitely look into treating for those. One of the things you can do organically, and probably the simplest thing that you can do, is to spray the underside of the foliage with water. That helps to knock off some of that stuff. But the first thing that signifies that, hey, you've got a problem going on is the foliage. And so you can see here the foliage is kind of puckered or bubbled. Sometimes it has a little bit of a red tinge to it. Anytime you see weird looking foliage, always look at the underside. Underside of foliage is really telling. You probably don't see any aphids on there now because the ladybugs have done a very good job for us, but there might be some, there might be some parasitized aphids on there, and that's cool. That's what we want to see. That's one of the aphid. I
noticed right as you were talking, actually, on that branch that you just flipped over, a ladybug was there and then took off as you moved your hand toward it.
Yep. And then if you're ever buying ladybugs, that's something you can do. You can import your ladybugs a little bit earlier than how they would naturally come in our environment. But when you're buying your ladybugs, make sure that you're purchasing larvae and that you're not purchasing adult ladybugs. The larval stage of the ladybug, they're probably not larval, it's like some instar of them. They look like a little armadillo. They don't look like a true ladybug.
Yeah, maybe we'll find some examples here as we're looking around.
Yeah, those are the voracious eaters. Those are the ones that are really hungry. The adults don't do a whole lot of that, but providing habitat for the adults is something you want to do in your gardens.
And those larvae don't have wings, so they're not flying away.
Yeah, exactly. Nice. Next, let's talk about scab. Scab affects apples, pears, plums, and it's basically on the exterior of the fruit. It's just cosmetic. Here's a nice piece of scab.
Ooh, very nice.
Yeah, right? Some apples are more prone to it than others. Some are going to be totally mar-free. Some are going to be so affected by scab that it distorts the shape of the fruit. What we use for scab, because it's a fungus, is we use fungicides. And so lime sulfur, plain sulfur, or copper typically are used in organic agriculture for scab control.
Okay, so you pointed it out on the fruit, but can we also see that on the leaves, or does it only appear on fruit?
You can see it on the leaves, and so probably a little bit of the brown spots on the leaves. Some of this also is leftover powdery mildew damage. So here's some scab, here's some scab over here, but there's also, this is powdery mildew damage. At this time of the season, the powdery mildew is done with its life cycle, so we don't see a whole lot of it.
The tips kind of in that state there.
Exactly. So if you've got lots of time on your hands, or if you have a client that wants to pay you to come and take care of that manually, you can snip it out. It's typically on the new growth. You can snip it out successfully and prevent it from spreading to the rest of the tree.
Cool.
Okay. What's next?
So you're talking about fungal diseases, and right, so here that seems like an obvious problem when it's wet for a lot of the year, wet and cooler.
Yeah, exactly.
Does it seem better in summer days like this? It's probably 80 degrees and sunny right now, or worse?
The scab itself? Well, the disease cycle is not active right now, so we're not spreading scab right now. And so typically, as soon as we start the dry season, we stop our scab sprays because the disease is no longer spreading. But the damage has already incurred. It's not going to get worse, but it's not going to get better at this point.
And then will it pick up again if it starts raining in the fall?
It will, but not nearly as much. We don't see a whole lot of that. And
at that point, harvest is happening. So.
Yeah, exactly. We're trying to get the trees down. And if you've done some summer thinning and pruning of the foliage, that will help your canopy dry out a little bit faster as well. So that's another reason that we're doing summer pruning, to open up that canopy, light, air, and pest stuff.
That's right.
Okay.